While hiding from the police, a man fell into a river and, after getting out, discovered he had developed frightening superpowers. His physical strength and regeneration abilities had increased to astonishing levels. A middle-aged man runs through the streets of Rome, having just stolen a watch and now being chased by the police. In a bid to escape, he heads toward a river, breaks a lock, and hides on an abandoned barge. But the police quickly surrounded the barge from both sides. Without hesitation, the man slips into the water, and the police lose sight of him and leave. As he climbs out of the water, he stumbles upon barrels marked with chemical hazard symbols. In an attempt to push one of the barrels away, he accidentally breaks the lid and falls inside. With great effort, he manages to crawl out onto the shore, feeling nauseous and covered in chemicals. Struggling to get home, he barely makes it to the toilet and vomits black liquid. Exhausted, he goes to bed and eventually falls asleep. On the news, there's a report about a terrorist attack in the city. The next morning, the man wakes up feeling completely healthy. After washing up, he has breakfast and heads over to his neighbor's house, only to find he's not home. Deciding to search for him, he ends up at a property guarded by fierce dogs. He learns that Sergio is busy and decides to wait for him. Meanwhile, a group of criminals is meeting with their boss, who wants to involve them in a shady deal with some Neapolitans. Despite their initial plans to rob armored trucks, the boss disregards their opinions and orders Sergio to go to the airport to pick up the goods. They find out that their new contact is Nuncia and that they have a week to sell a kilo of drugs. They also need to attend a woman's birthday party today. Rico refuses to take part in the drug deal and heads to the party instead. Their conversation is interrupted by a guy arriving with the boss's requested package. The boss unwraps it and finds a white hard drive instead of the black one he asked for. Furious, he yells, and one of the men decides to leave, unwilling to deal with the drugs. Since the robbery plan was his idea, he takes it with him. Fabio, however, is displeased and, from behind, hits the man with a hard drive, smashing his skull. Afterward, Sergio goes outside and sends one of the men to clean up the boss's room while he heads to meet Enzo, who is bringing him stolen watches for sale. After receiving the money, the man leaves. Sergio, smoking a cigarette and noticing some dog feces, remembers he still needs to retrieve the goods from the drug couriers. He pauses for a moment and calls out to Enzo. The men show up at Sergio's place to grab things for their meeting with the couriers. While they're there, Enzo meets Sergio's daughter, Alessia. She seems really unsettled, glued to the anime steel jig and linking everything around her to the show. As they head out to meet the couriers, Sergio apologizes for his daughter's behavior and explains that she's been struggling since her mother passed away. The men arrive at the airport, where there's a heavy police presence because of recent terrorist attacks. Two black guys approach their car, one of whom looks in really bad shape. Despite this, Sergio tells them to get in. They all drive to a construction site. The courier asks if they can take his brother to the hospital first, but Sergio insists that they need to secure the drugs before dealing with any medical issues. When they reach the 9th floor, Sergio discovers that one of the men is dead. He decides to cut open the body to retrieve the drug packets, but the brother vehemently protests, insisting that it would violate their traditions and anger the spirits of their ancestors. Sergio ignores him and, with a knife in hand, moves toward the corpse. Just then, his phone rings, distracting him. Seizing the moment, the brother grabs Sergio's gun and shoots him. Enzo, stunned and in agony, stumbles backward and falls from the 9th floor. Some time later, Enzo wakes up on the pavement, confused about how he ended up there. He runs away from the construction site. Meanwhile, the gang is at a club celebrating Nuncia's birthday, with Fabio performing on stage. As Fabio is in the middle of his act, Rico gets a call with some troubling news. After the performance, Rico is informed that Sergio is missing. A woman then approaches them, and Fabio reassures her that the drugs are secure and everything is under control. When Enzo gets back home, he runs into Alessia in the hallway. She asks where her dad is and why he isn't with him, mentioning that he promised her a princess dress. Enzo tells her he doesn't know. Once inside his place, Enzo takes a look at his shoulder wound from the bullet and takes care of it. He then settles down to eat while watching an erotic film. Alessia's constant crying and banging on the door, demanding to know where her father is, gets to him. In a fit of frustration, he punches the door, and to his shock, he breaks right through it. Surprised by his sudden strength, he starts experimenting, easily lifting a wardrobe and tearing a heavy radiator in half. Seeing the potential of his newfound strength, Enzo puts on a disguise and heads out to rob an ATM. After some effort, he manages to rip the machine out of the wall and carries it home on his shoulders. At his apartment, he tears the ATM apart to retrieve the cash. He then goes out for groceries, hanging up some money that was stained with ink bombs to dry. After picking up some medicine, he decides to treat his wound but is surprised to find that it has completely healed. Suddenly, he hears Alessia screaming. He rushes into the hallway to see her surrounded by Fabio's gang. Fabio is trying to find out where her father is, but Alessia can only speculate that he might have been taken by Queen Himiko, the Fire Emperor, or Minister Amitsu. Fabio realizes she's not making sense and that she might be unstable. Enzo decides to slip downstairs. Alessia notices him but he gestures for her to stay quiet. He sneaks past her and out of the building, while the gang drags Alessia back into the apartment. Inside, they plan to search for hidden drugs, but their plans are interrupted when a masked man suddenly bursts through the window. The gang attacks him, but he takes them all down. Holding one of the criminals by the head, Enzo demands they let Alessia go. Fabio insists they release his guy first. Enzo throws the man to the floor, and the criminal releases Alessia but, as a final act of defiance, stabs Enzo in the foot. After the gang leaves, Enzo removes his shoe and discovers that his toe has been severed. He returns to his apartment and uses a bandage to reattach it. Alessia follows him and calls him Hiroshi, the superhero, urging him to use his power for good instead of robbing. Enzo, however, is uninterested and irritated by her. She also shares disturbing stories about her psychiatrist, who took her and other patients to the pool and photographed them naked. Annoyed by her constant rambling about anime and her past, Enzo gives her some food and sends her to bed, explaining that if she goes back home, Fabio will return and kill her. After dinner, Alessia falls asleep on the adjacent bed, but Enzo can't sleep. Her exposed chest catches his eye, and he gets up to take a cigarette. As he searches his jacket pocket for a lighter, he finds a glasses case that he had picked up when he accidentally dropped Sergio's package. Opening the case, he discovers a detailed robbery plan for an armored truck. In the morning, Enzo wakes up to the sounds of an erotic film and sees Alessia watching him. He turns off the phone and asks if she has any friends or relatives. She says she has none and mentions that when her father was in prison, she was in a boarding school in Capranica. He tells her to get ready because he'll take her there. During their conversation, he removes the bandage from his toe. Although the wound has healed, the toe hasn't reattached and falls off again. Enzo drops Alessia off at the boarding school. She's clearly unhappy and reluctant to stay. He reassures her it will only be for one day, but she's skeptical, recalling how her father made similar promises and ended up disappearing for 2 months. Enzo tries to cheer her up by suggesting she join the other kids working on a papier-mâché project, but she declines, saying she's not done with her own project yet. She promises to give him the finished piece as a gift. Before he leaves, Alessia asks him to promise he'll come back for her and give her a day of darkness and a princess dress. In the car, Fabio and his crew are watching a viral video of the ATM heist. Fabio realizes that the person in the video is the same one who interrupted them at Sergio's place. As they watch, Rico is outside talking to his informant. When he returns, he confirms the time and route of the armored truck, which on Fridays carries supermarket revenue totaling about 200,000 euros. However, their usual contact who disables the GPS is unavailable until the end of the month. Fabio is frustrated since the heist is scheduled for tomorrow. He wishes they knew the identity of the person in the video to recruit him. Rico suggests they need to handle Nunzia first, but Fabio brushes it off, saying he has nothing to discuss with her and doesn't want to look foolish in front of the Neapolitans. Rico is puzzled by Fabio's motives, and Fabio admits he wants to make a big impact and become famous. Back at his hideout, Fabio finds Nuncia's men waiting. They've discovered Sergio's dead body and demand payment for the goods. Fabio explains that they've been deceived and needs time to sort things out. He promises that if Nunzia is patient, he'll have the money by the following evening. The group leaves, satisfied with this assurance. Meanwhile, Enzo is preparing for the heist, meticulously studying the armored truck's route. He turns on Steel Jig on the TV as part of his preparation. The next day, Fabio's gang sets up an ambush at a spot they know the truck will pass. Fabio orders his men to shoot to kill if necessary. As the truck approaches, they spot it and get ready to execute the heist. At that moment, Enzo, positioned on a bridge above the road, starts hurling large boulders at the truck. Once the truck is forced to stop, he leaps onto it, throws the drivers out of the cab, and pries open the doors with his bare hands to grab the money. Fabio, furious that Enzo is stealing the money right under their noses, begins shooting at him from a distance. Enzo, with a bag of euros in hand, makes a hasty escape as Fabio's men calm him down and lead him away. With the money from the heist, Enzo buys new appliances and stocks up on a mountain of food for his home. He sets up the projector and settles comfortably on the couch, ready for a quiet evening. Just as he's about to start dinner, there's a knock at the door. Peering out the window, he sees a police car. Cautiously opening the door, he finds 2 police officers standing with Alessia. They explain they found her wandering the streets, and she directed them to his address. After thanking the officers, Enzo closes the door. Once Alessia is inside, she immediately notices the boxes of food and new appliances and assumes he's robbed another ATM. Enzo, irritated, starts scolding her for bringing the police, but Alessia is unfazed. Instead, she presents him with a handmade gift and asks him to wear it whenever he turns into a superhero. Annoyed, Enzo tells her she can't stay and plans to return her to the orphanage. Alessia then spots a collection of her favorite anime on the shelf and suggests they watch it together. At the same time, Nuncia's men are waiting on site for Fabio with the money, but he never shows up. Instead, Fabio sits in his car, observing them from a distance. Back at Enzo's apartment, while they're watching the cartoon, Alessia suddenly takes his hand. Enzo moves closer, but Alessia begins to have an uncontrollable fit, pleading with him not to do this and to let her go. He manages to calm her down, but she continues to talk about her father and begs him to save him. The next day, Fabio sees two guys spray painting graffiti. After chasing them off, he examines the artwork and notices they've painted a figure from the ATM video. Meanwhile, Enzo takes Alessia to an amusement park and heads to the monster cave, but Alessia is disappointed because she wanted to visit the fire cave. To distract her, Enzo suggests a ride on the Ferris wheel. Although the ride isn't operational, he manually starts the wheel without electricity. Back at his headquarters, Fabio meets with Rico. Rico informs him that he's updated Nunzia on the situation and is heading to Marcello to borrow money. Fabio is displeased with Rico's approach and suggests they should find a supervillain and reclaim the money stolen from the armored truck. Rico is not interested, so Fabio decides to proceed his way. As soon as Rico leaves the room, Fabio orders one of his men to release the dogs. Unaware of the impending danger, Rico steps outside and is immediately attacked by the unleashed dogs. Meanwhile, Fabio sits by the window, listening to the screams from outside with grim satisfaction. Enzo and Alessia arrived at the mall, having visited several stores without finding the perfect princess dress. While walking around, Alessia tried to convince Enzo that saving people was his true calling. Suddenly, she spotted the dress in a display window. Enzo suggested she try it on, and after she changed, she peeked out of the fitting room and called him over. She placed his hand on her heart and told him that whenever he was near, it felt like her heart was about to leap out of her chest. She then awkwardly kissed him, and, overwhelmed by emotions, Enzo returned the kiss. They lost control, and despite her pleas for him to stop because it hurt, Enzo became intimate with her. After leaving the store in the princess dress, Alessia was visibly upset. She confronted Enzo, saying he should be ashamed because his mission was to save her father and humanity. Enzo, struggling with the situation, finally confessed that Sergio was dead. Alessia, unable to accept the harsh truth, burst into tears and ran away. Meanwhile, in his office, Fabio, irritated by the news coverage of terrorists and the supervillain who stole the ATM, was frustrated that someone else was getting the spotlight. He called for Tatsina and instructed him to contact Marcello. Alessia ran to a tram stop and got on a tram, but just as it was about to leave, it suddenly stopped. Enzo was holding it back with his superhuman strength. He lifted the tram off the rails, entered, and approached Alessia. He apologized for his behavior, promised to take care of her, and offered to take her to her father. As he carried her out of the tram, he noticed that people around them were filming him. They were soon distracted by a distant explosion. Fabio met with Marcello and borrowed the money, promising to repay it in 2 weeks with interest. Satisfied with the agreement, Marcello, who is transgender, suggested they have sex, and Fabio agreed. Their intimate moment was abruptly interrupted when Nuncia's men dragged them out of the car. Fabio pleaded for his life, saying he had the money and was ready to give it up. Despite his pleas, the woman among Nuncia's men shot Marcello and threatened to set Fabio on fire with gasoline. Terrified, Fabio was relieved when they revealed it was just a scare. Suddenly, Marcello, who had regained consciousness, killed Nuncia's men, but the woman managed to escape. Realizing his situation was dire, Fabio, in a fit of rage, killed Marcello. Meanwhile, Enzo took Alessia to the morgue to say goodbye to her father. Back at his headquarters, Fabio found his dead dogs outside and his injured men inside. The TV was still on, showing news coverage of Enzo Cecchetti, the man with super strength, which caught Fabio's attention. Turning around, he saw Tatsina, the only one who had managed to avoid capture. After calming Tatsina, Fabio shared his plan. Enzo, having taken Alessia to a hotel to stay hidden, was in their room when Fabio burst in. Fabio shot Enzo with a tranquilizer, causing him to pass out. When Enzo woke up, he was tied to the bed with duct tape from neck to toes. He begged Fabio to leave Alessia alone and offered all his money in exchange for her safety. But Fabio wasn't interested in money, he wanted to know the source of Enzo's strength. He theorized that with such power, they could achieve something grand, like blowing up the Olympics to gain worldwide notoriety. Enzo admitted he didn't know the origin of his strength, prompting Fabio to order Tatsina to harm Alessia. At this point, Enzo decided to reveal everything. He led Fabio to the riverbank near the barge where he had gained his powers. Enzo explained that his abilities began after falling into the water. Fabio was not satisfied with this explanation and demanded Enzo get into the water to prove it. Meanwhile, Alessia, left in the van, managed to retrieve a needle from her bag and stabbed Tatsina in the neck. A car was speeding along the waterfront when Fabio realized it was Nuncia's crew. As they opened fire, Alessia stumbled out of the van and was caught in the crossfire. Enzo rushed to her, but before he could fully react, Nuncia approached the wounded Fabio and set him on fire. Fabio, engulfed in flames, fell into the river. With her final words, Alessia urged Enzo to save people and complete his mission. As she passed away, Enzo held her close, sobbing uncontrollably. The next morning, a mangled figure emerged from the river. In the car, Fabio applied makeup and donned a wig, transforming his appearance. He then headed to Nuncia's house. Once there, He turned on the music, recorded a video, and proceeded to kill everyone in the house one by one. After the massacre, he found a room filled with weapons. Enzo was wandering along the highway when a police car spotted him. They decided to turn around to verify his identity. The car behind them, not noticing the police car had stopped, crashed into it at full speed. The police car flipped several times and caught fire. Enzo rushed to help, ripping open the trunk and pulling out a child, whom he handed back to her mother. As he did so, he saw on a nearby food truck's TV that a terrorist had killed Nuncia's family and promised to stage a massive explosion. Enzo realized that the terrorist was Fabio and remembered the mention of a stadium. He took a motorcycle from a bystander and headed to the stadium. At the stadium, Fabio, disguised as a homeless person, had knocked out all the paramedics, stolen an ambulance, and planted explosives inside. Enzo arrived, moved a barrier aside, and sneaked onto the premises. A fierce battle ensued between him and Fabio, with their superhuman strength causing columns to crumble and walls to break. The police arrived but were unable to capture Fabio, who escaped. Enzo followed, discovering the bomb planted in the ambulance. As people began evacuating the stadium, Enzo jumped into the car and sped away, but the police stopped him. Realizing the danger if the bomb exploded near them, Enzo grabbed the explosive device and pushed the ambulance toward the police. He swerved onto the sidewalk and ran as fast as he could toward the river. With minutes left before the explosion, Fabio attacked him on the bridge and knocked the bomb from his hands. Despite his injuries, Enzo managed to get up and, in a final act of bravery, grabbed Fabio and leapt into the water with him. Moments later, there was a massive underwater explosion. The blast drenched everyone nearby, and the force of the explosion hurled Fabio's severed head out of the water. The news reported on Enzo's heroic act. Whether he was truly a hero was open to debate, but the public saw him as one, perhaps because they were in desperate need of heroes. Unfortunately, this hero was no longer with them. Amidst the city, atop the Colosseum, a solitary figure stood. Enzo, now wearing the steel jig mask given to him by Alessia. What do you think? If Alessia hadn't died, would he have become a superhero or would he have continued stealing? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.